All right. Hello again, everybody. It is the 20th of April, 2021, and we are here for a special called session and agenda setting session of the Athens Clarke County Mayor and Commission. And the first order of business is to move out of executive session. So may I have a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion from Commissioner Houle, second from Commissioner Myers. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so on our action item special called session agenda, we just have a single item tonight. This is new business, so I do need a motion for suspension of rules. May I have a motion for suspension of rules?
So moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion from Commissioner Houle, second from Commissioner Denson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries. So that single item is a,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
can I call the roll to make sure we have a quorum?
but please go right ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Davenport,
Here.
Parker, Blink,
Here.
Wright,
Present.
Denson,
Here.
Poole,
Here.
Edwards,
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Thornton,
Here.
Hamby.
And I believe Commissioner Parker is here. I apologize. She was
Oh,
on
yes, I'm
audio.
here. Thank you for unmuting me.
So Hamby's here also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, so I do believe we have a quorum. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So what we have as our single action item is revised preliminary plans for streetscape elements of the Clayton Street Infrastructure and Transportation Improvement Project, which is TSPLOST 2018 project number 9. And so I'll ask Manager Williams if he can just give us a high-level overview and the public the same to understand the modifications that are embodied in this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. This project has been long in the making, and it's substantial and transformational for downtown. A lot of effort, Mayor and Commission past decisions, and investment have gone into this, and supplemented by the voters approving both the SPLOST and T-SPLOST to support it. In and around Clayton Street, when these preliminary plans were first approved by the Commission several years ago, I think the thought was that the buildings were somewhat square going down the street. As we've come to find out, on Clayton, on either end of Clayton, as it's bounded by Lumpkin Street on one end and Thomas on the other, the buildings actually close in on each other a little bit on either end. So what that meant was, when you work from the inside out, you start with the middle of the street, and you have to have so much width for the travel lanes, so much width for the parking stalls, so much width for the sidewalk that Mayor and Commission were clear about having, at least 5 foot or so of clear space. And then, you wanted that there was some indication of planters and trees. As those buildings closed in, what we discovered when the work started, that it was going to come at the expense of some of the sidewalk cafes. And we were let known about that by the affected property owners, and staff went out there and did some measurements, discovered that the buildings did close in on themselves. And so that set off some discussions with the Mayor and Commission, the user group, which included the Downtown Development Authority members, and taking all of that into account, we looked at, staff looked at what's called the furniture zone. So that's between the sidewalk and the curb. And that's where we're going to have trees and planters and benches and light poles and things of that nature. And there was in the initial plans, I think, a real desire to try to make downtown as green as possible, to have as much planting material, and that involved a number of planters along the street, mid-block, and on the bump outs. And when you're looking at how, if you put the priority of having space for people to move and perhaps congregate, and you want to keep the sidewalk cafes, then really the planters are a natural item to take a hard look at. And so staff mocked up what those planters would look like. As you know, from Lumpkin down to Pulaski on Clayton, that was 2 lanes some years ago, and we were able to use that as pretty close to real life of what we might see, mocking up those planters. And what we found, and what you found as we left them up for several days and everybody took a look at it, is that it was quite an encroachment of real estate and space for pedestrian use. And so one of the major things that this action tonight contemplates is the removal of the planters from the previously approved preliminary plans, except at the corners and the bump outs. And we will go back to where the planters were with concrete sidewalk. There'll be widened space for pedestrians, and there will be some addition of steps as the grade transitions. That's hard to think about because you think of Clayton being flat, but if you walk out there, you'll see where it falls away towards some of the buildings. So that's a big change here that's being that you're being asked to consider. Also, the curb lines were set so that they could be flexible for different parking configurations in the future, which required thermoplastic crosshatch, and that's a lot of words to say. The painted pavement and striping to accommodate any future changes for the parking configuration. And what we heard from you very clearly in the wake of the work session that we had was that you want to reduce the amount of that crosshatch and use it, whether it's additional space for pedestrians or by adding motorcycle parking spots. The one thing that confines us somewhat is that the storm drains have already, all that work's been done, and those storm inlets really can't move. So these plans work around that, and as much as possible enlarge those bump outs and try to add alternative uses in the thermoplastic crosshatch. Another significant, and I'm almost done, Mayor, sorry to go into such detail, the stormwater filtration. So there was a thought initially that the planters, if one thing I don't think folks really appreciate is some of the stormwater regulations that really limit pressure washing, for instance, on the sidewalks, and the pollutants that introduces into the storm system, which goes straight into the creeks. And so there's a stormwater quality aspect to all of this that I think at the very outset, initially it was hoped that the planters would act as some infiltration and quality for removal of such things. And so we're doing away with most of the planters. And so the thought is that we're going to move the stormwater filtration to be a system that's included in an existing facility that's built down on East Broad Street that drains downtown. And so not only will it serve Clayton Street, but it'll also serve a much larger area of helping to filter that water. And then two other final things. It was originally contemplated that there'd be lighting that would be, across the street all the way down, festoon lighting. And in the final throes here, we've learned that there was a change in the fire code last year that really limits the ability to go across the street because it could interfere with a fire truck's, one of our ladder trucks, if it was trying to service a building. And so, but it does allow for the lights to run parallel the street. So there will be festoon lighting. It won't cross, but it will go parallel the street down Clayton. And then finally, just to formalize that addition of the rainbow crosswalks at the College and Clayton intersection that you've already discussed at length. So Mayor, those are the major changes to the preliminary plans you're being asked to consider tonight.
Thanks for that overview, Manager Williams. I appreciate it. Questions or input from commissioners?
Mayor, would you mind if I say something? This is Mike.
Please go right ahead, Commissioner.
Sure. Sorry. Thank you. Just a couple of things. I appreciate staff's willingness to look at this with a different lens, and the commissioners also willingness to look at this with a different lens. And I think we're moving in the right direction for a couple of reasons. One, this is certainly going to allow more sidewalk space. But two, as we've learned for those of us on the corridor committee, certainly when you have as many planners as we were going to put downtown, and as many as we've got downtown already, the maintenance cost associated with continual update of planners is not cheap. And it's not cheap, as we're learning on the corridor committee meeting everywhere else around town. So, and those are expenses that we have to incur each and every year. And I guess if you're planning, what is it? Are the perennials the one that change every season, or is that? Yeah, those are perennials. I'm learning all about flowers. So perennial, but at any rate, the cost of having those planners would be quite significant in our budget and for downtown. And also, one good thing about this plan that hasn't changed is it's on the fourth page from the last. You can go and add up, and I hope my math was right. You can go ahead and add up the number of trees that are the new trees that are being planted versus the ones that were taken down, and it looks like they've taken down 62 trees, but we'll be putting back up 95 trees. So certainly there will be an increased tree canopy for downtown that I think will add to that greenery that Manager Williams was speaking of. And also, one final point, I want to just give a shout out to Andrew Saunders, who put up the mock boxes over there in front of Shokatini and down that area. And I found it interesting that he put up 11 of the mock boxes that kind of looked like coffins, maybe cemetery coffins. And I didn't know if the number 11 was significant or not, but since there are 11 of us, I think he was trying to send a message. And I couldn't think of any better place to be buried than downtown Athens with some ginkgo tree growing on top of me. But at any rate, appreciate Andrew Saunders doing that, and I hope the commission will look favorably upon these changes. Thank you.
Thanks for offering yourself as fertilizer, Commissioner.
Yeah, I don't know. The tree may die, but we'll see.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this recently and for the past, 20 years now, I guess. It's been a real long time coming, and it's been painful, but I believe the end result is going to be worth it. There's a lot of hullabaloo out there about what downtown looks like right now, and it's rough. It's really rough, but it's going to be worth it in the end. And I appreciate the extra work that Andrew Saunders has gone into, and some of our landscaping staff and the tree selection. There's a good variety of trees, which will ensure the long-term health. A lot of times you pick a single variety and you get one blight and it can wipe the whole crop out. Here we have a good variety of natives and some, hardy, time-tested, landscape species. And of different sizes appropriate for different locations. And they're also going to be installed in such a ways where they will last longer because they won't have the conflicts that the most recent trees have had, the underground conflicts, and also some of the overhead conflicts. So we're going to have a real lasting streetscape with, a real diversity of tree canopy along Clayton Street that probably our grandchildren can prance around under. Some of us, I guess, already.
Others. Manager Williams, of course, the public is always interested in the timetable we're talking about here. So is it fair to say that substantial surface level kind of roadbed and sidewalk infrastructure should be complete around the first of the year, with the kind of furniture and tree plantings happening in the first couple of months of 2022? Is that about right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. And Commissioner Davenport? No, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand. All right, I'd certainly entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion for approval from Commissioner Hamby, second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none. That is all of our action items for this evening. And so I'd ask for a motion to adjourn the special called session.
So moved, Commissioner Wright.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Wright. I apologize. Who was second?
Commissioner Denson.
Second from Commissioner Denson. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, everybody. Good job. Moving on to our agenda setting session. We, of course, have telephonic input opportunity now, but there's been no sign up for telephonic public input. And so we are going to go ahead and begin, as we always do, with the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items that have been reviewed by the agenda review team and are recommended for approval the first Tuesday of the following month with a single vote. And tonight, those are items 1 through 6. Is there any commissioner who would like to remove an item from consent for discussion? Commissioner Davenport.
Item number 1.
Okay. All right. Any others?
Item number 5 and 6, I had some questions.
Kelly, I am not able to pull up my agenda, but I'm hoping that one of those items that Commissioner Myers or Pat, well, I know it wasn't Pat, would be about the Macon Highway.
That's
Number
on
7.
Okay.
That's on
We ain't
discussion.
Okay.
All right. Any others? All right. So we'll go ahead and begin discussion with those items that were pulled. First was the Falling Shoals Drive parking prohibition. Commissioner Davenport, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks staff and everyone involved. I would just like to keep this off consent. I need to do my due diligence in meeting with the neighborhoods association as well. Everyone has received an email from the neighborhood association, and I would just like to keep this off of consent.
All right. Any other input on that? All right. Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Moving on to item 5, the Old Jefferson Road sanitary sewage pump station concept. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I just had some questions as I was reviewing that for Manager Williams. I'm assuming I'm trying to pull up the agenda item here again. One was I just wanted to make sure I understood this. This whole thing is supposed to. Yeah, a door creaking. My door. Anyway, this is just a second pump station. A lot of noise there, but anyway, this is just a second pump station, Manager Williams. There's another pump station over on the east side, and this would be another one. And I'm just trying to understand it. This is for that development that we've seen in, I think it's Commissioner Jensen's area, whether or not that's where it would be used for that development, whatever it ends up being, whether it's built by right or there's a change. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, and if you don't mind, just a couple statements on that. This is pretty hard to fathom, that we have just miles and miles of sewer collection pipe in the ground, and it is virtually all gravity fed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the topography in Athens, Clark County, that is a sheer engineering feat. Now, the agenda item previous to this, there are private pump stations that serve individual facilities that you have to approve their connection to the system. But this would involve the developer building the pump station and then turning it over to us for maintenance. So, and I'm just going a little bit further here. So yes, on the one hand, it is going to be a maintenance obligation that we assume. The one thing that Frank Stevens always said is gravity doesn't fail. A pump station is mechanical and it can fail, and so it needs maintenance. But to your point, it does serve an area of the county and would add some more folks on there. From a practical standpoint, I think it's amazing we've been able to maintain a system without pump stations. But there's clearly an ordinance here that calls for staff to bring this forward when such a request is presented.
Yeah, and that's what I was just trying to sort of understand it as a new commissioner here. And I don't know why I got really into looking at the numbers, but I did on this. And I was trying to have the numbers match up from the beginning on the operating expenses that are at 17,636 with, I think down below in the facts and issues where the numbers, it said for the estimated operating and maintenance costs were 98,000 and then 34,000 for the power. And so maybe you could just sort of like follow up with me before we move this to consent next time so that I can understand that. And then also it's like the question also about the deposit covering that. And is that what that deposit is, that $250,000 deposit?
So essentially, it's a payment to the ratepayers who, the thought is that, we're not initiating this. This isn't for the system now. It's to accommodate other users. And typically, we have, when somebody ties into the system, they buy a piece of the system. In this case, even though they're giving an asset, if you will, that asset comes with a cost to maintain and also to replace one day. And so, this will be in perpetuity. The 20-year window was just, what staff felt like was reasonable, moving forward. So it is to help offset the impact to the system and the ratepayers by assigning that cost to where it's coming from.
Okay, so in this case, deposit is really it's a payment, and it's a payment from the developer or whoever owns the property. Is that correct?
Well, and I want to make sure with Attorney Drake I'm using the right terminology here, but yes, in effect, that's what it would be. Those funds would come to the enterprise to offset the addition of the asset to the system.
And come from a private entity, from who's building this area. Okay, and I'll follow up with a question. I'll email you the question about the numbers just to help me with my math problem.
Moving over to Commissioner Link.
I have a question about the pump station. I know these things are pretty energy intensive. They use a lot of electricity to pump the sewage uphill and into the gravity fed system. What is the likelihood of getting renewable energy out here? Is this suited for solar energy?
I'd have to ask staff about that. I would think you would have to have some type of battery system, Commissioner, because as you would imagine, a pump station typically has a wet well that, it's not a constant pumping. It fills up and then it lifts, because what you're doing is you're lifting the sewage up to an elevation where it falls into the gravity, or forcing it over to it. And so it is possible, and we can certainly take a look at that and give you a thoughtful response. In this case, Weatherly Woods, maybe not, because as it said, it's a big pump station. This is a nominal amount of flow, so it would be more possible with this one.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that, because I know it is pretty energy intensive, and this is built infrastructure. It's not like you'd be putting solar panels on pristine environment. I am very interested in doing whatever we can to lower the energy consumption of this facility, and being that it just kind of does operate intermittently, maybe those intermittent operations can be timed for, times when that solar energy is optimal.
Well, we'll certainly look into it. I would imagine with so many homes affected, we'd have to have some type of redundancy in case that system failed.
Yeah.
But we can look at that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, just like a couple of clarifying questions to Manager Williams, which I think you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but this is really operating outside of the zoning request, correct? This is something that would be it's a necessity no matter what, zoning change or not. Is that correct?
Well,
yeah.
Well, it's a request by the developer. I think the lots could be served by septic, but they want to go on sewer, and you could argue that from a water quality, that residential, especially in a denser environment, are better served. Water quality is better served by being connected to the sewer system.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're correct. But for it to be on our sewage system, is no matter what, if the zoning change was done or anything, this would have to be done either way.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be done.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is the current density of. So I mean, the other option would be for us to not take this, and then basically it could be developed with septic, is what you're saying, right? That's the other alternative.
Yes, and probably and I don't have the density committed to memory.
This
but
is
obviously
RS8 currently, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It is Brad Griffin. It's RS8 currently.
Yeah, so that's a fairly dense environment for septic.
So the Commissioner, you were asking, I guess, they would need to be able to attach to our sewage system for the increased density.
Yes.
It's not absolutely required for any development, but it would certainly be a less dense development. Is that fair to say, Director Griffin?
Yes. I mean, the RS8 zoning with septic tanks is going to yield about 1/3 of the allowable density that they will get if they have sewer. So even as zoned today, they're looking for full optimization of their density they have, and they've got to get sewer to do that.
So said another way, development is possible without being connected to our sewer system. It'd be much less denser.
Yes, sir.
And then follow-up question on that, and with the way that I read this here, is that us agreeing to this has absolutely no commitment on the zoning change of any sort. This is a completely separate thing that will move forward no matter what.
This doesn't preempt your zoning decision.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any others? All right, there are a couple of outstanding questions. I know staff is going to work on those. So thanks for asking those. All right, moving on to item number 6. This is the Martin Luther King Parkway public art. And Commissioner Myers had a question about this. I think she's trying to figure out if she can pogo from pyre to pyre.
Right. No, I like the piece. I love public art. I'm not a art critic, but I know I know what's fun and I like, and I like it. I just had some questions about the process, and again, maybe the manager's office can sort of follow up with me on this, in terms of the evaluation of the artists. I was just curious. I know that this artist is coming out of California, and I was just curious whether or not in the evaluation process, if there are any points given to regional, like in the evaluation metrics. Are there any points given to regional or local artists in this? And I know this is kind of a weird thing, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Is just, again, regionally, people can get here and do the work, by driving a car or something else. But this is requiring a lot of, flights across the country and so forth. So I was just wondering if there was any preference for regional and sort of a local development of artists, and that those might be two things. And then the other thing was, I saw that the artist had mentioned willingness to having a 1-month internship, local internship, and I think that would be wonderful. that there might be some young artists who would really appreciate the opportunity to be involved in that for the month that it happens. So I'd like to know how we go about pursuing that.
Okay, we'll follow up with that, Commissioner.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I appreciate the Cultural Affairs Commission's work on this. It is a fun piece. I think it's going to really liven up the Greenway. I have similar questions to Commissioner Myers. I noticed in the agenda packet something about the artist bringing in their own team for the installation. I'm wondering if, some of those exorbitant expenses, could be avoided or lessened if ACC staff were to do that. You're going to need folks who just have technical capabilities in sinking concrete, the basic installation. And I'm trying to find the page that had the wording on it that kind of kicked it off in my brain that this might be an issue. But yeah, I'm curious if that's kind of a possibility in there, because I am concerned also about, flying out an installation team from California when a local team could do the job just fine. Of course, I believe the artists themselves should be on site. But as far as the basic installation, I'm curious.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I was actually just wondering if you could clarify where along Martin Luther King Drive this is. The aerial photograph that kind of plots the location, it's hard for me to kind of figure out where exactly that is on MLK.
Are you familiar with where where there's the link between MLK proper and the sort of linear component of the Greenway that parallels the river?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is fairly near that intersection of those two trail segments.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, Commissioner, I have a hunch, but I need to verify that to be dead sure and to tell you and the public.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful just to know that we know where we're voting to put this thing for whoever lays the concrete.
Any further questions? All right, everybody. We'll talk more about this box of crayons next time. All right. Moving on to new business. Item number 7 is the project concept for the water trails element on Macon Highway that we talked about in the work session. Any further input on this tonight?
Is this moi where I can come in at?
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
I understand that it's not on consent, but I do think there's some information that was brought to me that I don't think was clearly explained at the work session. I would love to see this 163-page report that if anybody else has it, I don't have it, but I understand that it exists. I would love to see that, and I would love to visit that area and see it for myself. It sounds so much like the last 2 developments that we voted on, and my position on development is always the same. We want to have the support of the community the best we can, and I don't want to vote against any community. I would like to support the commissioner in every district, but I have a hard time voting for things when residents have concerns and we don't clear them up the best we can. And the only reasons that I do vote against a development is if it's a safety or an environmental issue. I don't know if this is a safety issue, but there could be an environmental issue on the table. So I don't know what options I have for now, because I understand it's not on consent, but can we get this information, if it's out there, for all the commissioners before next month's meeting?
Are you referencing the pre-application packet that I think was referenced in an email we received?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
If we could all get that prior to next month's meeting to review, I think I would be in a better position. I think we all would be in a better position on this item.
Thanks, Commissioner.
I have talked to Commissioner Edwards, not in detail because I didn't know about the package when I talked to him. So I'd like to follow his lead on this. But for me personally, I think I would like to see this information.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had a few questions, one of which dovetails with what Commissioner Thornton was asking about, just that DNR application. And a constituent, I had a few constituents calling me today, so I forwarded a link to that some folks sent me that should be hopefully in y'all's inboxes, although I've been having some weird email issues today. But I am curious if we could get some clarification on if and how voting on this boat ramp relates to any other proposals. To kind of put it another way, like, does this sort of set some dominoes in motion for a bigger network of plans that we're committing to by doing this? And then I know we talked a little, this was mentioned, but just kind of generally in our work session, but if we could get a bit more information on what other locations were explored and why this one was chosen, that would be helpful. I don't know if you have that already, Manager Williams.
Commissioner Edwards had asked for that a week ago, and staff is finalizing that, so we'll share that with you.
Awesome. And then the third thing I was hoping to get clarity on was, is this location one where we anticipate commercial use, like companies doing tours or anything like that? Because that was another concern I've heard people raise, but my understanding was that was not what we were expecting to happen here.
Well, my answer to that, I'll verify this with staff that's been working on this, is, well, let me start with this. The first question you had about this being a domino, this is a launch for a takeout point. We've got a put-in at Ben Burton, and a lot of folks don't, really have the ability to paddle down and then paddle back upstream to get back out. So this is a companion piece to the Ben Burton put-in. And right now, folks are kind of left to get out where they can and go across people's property. And that doesn't engender a lot of support for this type of thing, because people see people wandering on their property. They don't like that. So we've got the Greenway network, which is a whole separate project of accessibility, along the trails. This is merely a launch takeout point, which again would serve as a companion to Ben Burton. There are no plans or partnering with any commercial companies to use it, but it is a public takeout. So if somebody was able to, get in there, and y'all have seen it, it's pretty small. You couldn't come in there with a large truck or trailer or anything like that. It's really 9 parking spaces and a turnaround. But we couldn't prevent somebody from coming and picking up several canoes or kayaks for hire if they wanted to. It'd be a public launch and takeout.
In the theoretical world where commercial operations wanted to start using this, is there a way for us to safeguard against them, parking large vehicles there for long periods of time, like taking up more than one spot and that sort of thing?
It's a public, a public parking lot, and we don't intend for it to be staffed or manned. Mm-hmm. In commercial, I mean, there's not a lot of room for anything large. I think that's going to preempt anybody. I mean, if you've got a guiding company or a small business that's a guide on the, they want to take 1 or 2 folks down the river for commercial purposes, certainly we couldn't prevent that.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I am excited about this access point. You know, I think we're long overdue in providing proper access to our river. It's a great asset and it's so underutilized in our community. I had some conversation with Commissioner Davenport about the site itself and plantings on the site. I'd like to, and we don't have one of those overhead satellite images to show the plantings. And I know that a portion of this site is privately owned by the billboard company, and we don't want to plant anything that might inhibit view of the billboard. But there's potential for planting, you know, native riparian buffer shrubs and perennials and things like that. You know, maybe small trees that are behind the billboard view shed that could provide some shade for some of these folks who might be getting out off their kayaks and want to sit down and have some lunch. I mean, we all know how hot it can get in the Georgia summer. So I'd really like, you know, I might be interested in working on a CDO or something to kind of just direct some general planting requirements. Native shrubs, native perennials, the kind of things that are appropriate for that environment.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Myers.
I'm in support of this project. I think it was probably about 2015-16. I worked with the river trail portion of the Oconee Rivers people in looking for launch sites. In fact, that's probably where I met our central office director, Andrew Saunders, there, and heard extensive presentations on the difficulty of finding a companion site to the one at Ben Burton. So I know that the people who've been working on this have actually gone to all the landowners and talked with them down the way. I'm sure it would be great to have that all in a document that showed us all that. There weren't that many, and it seemed a frustrating problem at that time. This is a wonderful opportunity. You know, having that one place at Ben Burton, but without a takeout is a real problem. I see this benefiting our community. One, on the obvious that people who paddle can get out, but I think that's also something that people who would come to Athens would really enjoy. It's an added benefit. I know I've heard the Classic Center people talk about outdoor activities, or maybe it's the travel people, hospitality, outdoor activities, and this would add on to that as well. But I think also the more access we give people to the river, the more people are able to see this incredible natural resource and do what we need to do to preserve it. Simply, we get our water from these rivers, and so the more people understand the role of these rivers in Athens, the better for us. So I just want to express my support for this project and for all the people who've worked on this for many, many, many years to get at this point. And, you know, more trees are always good. So, Melissa and Patrick.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Edwards and then Denson. And then I think Manager Williams was going to share an image regarding some of the questions you've had. Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Go ahead, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers actually said a lot of what I was thinking. I think he put it very well. I think one of the things is, like, there's not a lot of available riverfront property for good reason, right? I mean, everybody wants that. You're not going to find a lot of just cheap, openly available property. So I look at this site, finding a site that is not on a lot, that we could actually be using, that is close to a major road that people can very quickly get in and out of, that is right there on the river. I think this location works very well. And I appreciate staff taking into consideration the concern from nearby Princeton Mill about the possible confusion of on the roads and having people driving down there. And so changing that name, I think, was a very considerate, necessary change that was made. But I think this is also one of those situations, right, where I get it. Like, every community is going to have a little bit of fear about something new that's going to come in and possibly think about what the negative consequences could be. But being somebody who in Burton Park is very close to my house, and I go there probably at least once a week with my daughter and kind of walk around the the river access there. It's not a place of bad behavior. It's people when people are using it, which it actually is not that often. It's not a ton of people. It's really not. I've only seen actually a couple people using it while I've been there. It's people who just want to get in and enjoy the river, which is something that I'm glad that we're encouraging. And I find that it'd be very difficult to find a location better suited than this one. While it might not be perfect, that's just because you're never going to have a perfect opportunity possibly. But I think this is pretty good. If commissioners want to try to add in some green space, some more greenery there, I think that's good. I did drive by this property, and if you're coming from the road, if you're looking back between the neighborhood and the site, there's pretty thick trees and brush already there. But yeah, if we want to add some to make it a little bit more comfortable for people who are using it, like you said, for like lunches or a picnic table or something like that, I think that could be definitely something I could get behind too. But I'm very much appreciate this and support of it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Edwards.
I'm awaiting the information that Manager Williams is going to provide us just about the site selection process here. And as y'all know, the county government's constrained by state law to only be allowed to purchase property up to 10% over the appraised value. So that's a pretty that limits us in the marketplace. We might find a better site, but the owner might want to charge more than 10% of the appraised value. And I know that's the case with many parcels in this area. The county government negotiated for a very long time with an individual. We just could never get the price right. I know that some parcels have been transferred with deed restrictions preventing recreational use. That's another constraint for us. So I look forward to getting more information from the manager about the site selection. It sure would be, one thing I have heard from residents in this area, couldn't we find something larger? Couldn't we get, something more appropriate, more optimal than sort of this very small site that we've got sort of shoehorned right in this GDOT right away? And I think that's a valid question. So I look forward to getting more information from the manager. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Commissioner.
This is Avita. I appreciate Commissioner Edwards' comments because I do think information is important. And I'm hearing commissioners speak and they haven't gotten all the information. And that's easy to speak when it's not your neighborhood. But I do support Commissioner Edwards. Let's get the information so we can make educated decisions and not our personal values. That's all I have to say, Mayor. Thank you.
And Manager Williams, I think you've got a graphic just to point out a couple of details. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Going back to Commissioner Link's point here, it's out of the way. So this is the site plan that's in the agenda packet, page 9 of the item. And this line that you see that runs parallel Macon Highway is the extent of the GDOT right-of-way. And plantings within the GDOT right-of-way is something that we would have to, consult with them about and would have to be maintained. As it stands, there are several trees and shrubs and some grass and wildflower in the immediate area around the parking lot. And then as you go down to the river, most all of this is on GDOT right away. So Commissioner Link, that would be a complicating factor to adding a good, any number of plantings there.
Closer to the river at the pullout site.
Down here?
I'm mostly concerned about shade in that area as folks
Gotcha.
are lugging boats.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. nice shady spot, maybe with a bench where someone can sit down and have a sandwich after they've been paddling on the river for a couple hours.
That might be tough with the floodplain, but I agree.
Well, there are trees and shrubs, native trees and shrubs that are conducive to thriving in the floodplain.
Privet.
And Manager Williams, thinking about these details, privet, nice. This is the concept stage. Can you just detail for the public what follows then?
Thank you. And really, this is all to help facilitate the grant application, which is due at the end of this month. Although we've got a few days leeway the state gave us to accommodate the mayor and commission decision cycle. And so we're hoping to leverage some of the SPLOST funds that the citizens voted on with the state grant funds to help fund this. So there would be a subsequent approval for you with preliminary plans once we get further down in the grant process. It could be up to a year, though, depending on how that process goes.
Okay, thanks for that. All right, everybody ready to move on to the next item?
Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I guess it's what I heard a lot from folks today was concerns about that application and whether this would, like, in order to satisfy the requirements of the grant, if we get it, that we would have to follow through on XYZ things that would make this location a hub, and that essentially, like, approving the boat ramp here is just a boat ramp for now, but is actually kind of obligating us to other developments that would more directly impact nearby properties. So is that the case, or is that not the case?
We will verify that, Commissioner Hull, but the obligations that we are assuming with this project are, to build the project pretty much as it's been presented to the state and to match the funds that the state are giving us. I think that's the extent of the obligation, but I'll verify that with staff.
Okay, so the idea of it becoming a hub or whatever, what that hub is a hub of and what that connects to is nothing that needs to happen in order for us to move. If we vote on this, we're not necessitating that those things happen a certain way.
Yeah, I think, it's a competitive project because it is considered in the context of the Greenway network plan, that there's other, connections and things, but it doesn't obligate us to treat it as a hub or to build anything further than this.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Follow-up, Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, just a quick comment here. I think what does get scary for people is some of the there's a lot on the Greenway network plan that is dream visionary like there that one could look at. I know that the Greenway is shown coming over a bridge. The bridge into the bottom of the street that I'm in and around the neighborhood. I know the landowners down there, I don't think they're going to be interested in selling that property. That is so far off in the future and would involve so many pieces moving in the right direction. I understand people get scared of those things. But I do want to, just speak up for the people I know who put together this kind of plan, that they have been looking at the different sites for years and years, and hopefully that'll show in what Manager Williams gets at the request of Commissioner Edwards there. And I just really wanted to, clarify that. I also wanted to say that I appreciate the public comment we've also gotten from the church that's located right there as well. We've had a real, I finally got through all my emails, and I appreciate all the diverse opinions that we've gotten on this.
Mayor, if I might, upon further reflection with Commissioner Hull's question, I think, there's a grain of truth in the question that was asked, but maybe, that the water trails are a part of the Greenway network plan, and this is shown as sort of a hub in the future. So it is, as Commissioner Myers just said, it's a long-term vision but each project sort of stand alone. And certainly the state grant, the state funds we received does not obligate us to build anything further than this facility. But the Greenway Network Plan is pretty far reaching, as for a vision on how to connect along the greenways, pedestrian and water access.
I just have a question for Manager Williams.
Go ahead, Commissioner
if it's
Thornton.
okay, Mayor. Prior to getting us to the point where we are right now, what kind of notification or information did residents get, and how early did they get it? And if you need to get back with me on that, that's fine. But I would like to know, since this has been on the table for so long, there is no reason, logically to me, that residents was kind of caught off guard 3 weeks before it was announced. So if you need to check your records, that's fine, but that could be the other thing I would request.
Yes, Commissioner, and I guess we'll include that as part of that. Obviously you're asking specific to this particular project, but because of the context of the Greenway Network Plan, we'll also detail, how that was notified and how the public participated.
That's fine. I'm good. I just, we ran on this commission, the majority of the members on this commission ran on transparency. And I just wanted to make sure I've done my part as being transparent. So when you put that together, please add that to the request.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right. So item 8 is a recommendation from the Legislative Review Committee regarding the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. They've been asked to look at substandard streets, particularly regarding the speed and frequency of vehicles amidst the existing requirements. So Commissioner Wright chairs LRC. So Commissioner, I'll ask you to go first and then proceed to some others.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Hopefully I don't start coughing and sneezing in the middle of the beginning of this. But so this has been an LRC, and we've made some major improvements as far as making it easier for an area to be reviewed. It came out of committee last fall with some additional, instead of doing a commission defined option, we went back to committee to talk about some details, and then the new LRC makeup of 2021 has looked at it and made additional improvements. And so I have that here, and the committee stands ready to help explain what we did in the committee tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Wright. And Commissioner Link, obviously you were very keen on this at the outset of its assignment. So go right ahead.
Yes, I'm even more keen on this these days. If y'all think I was kind of a pain in the ass about pedestrian safety before, I'm going to be even more so for the rest of my life. So yeah, I really appreciate the committee taking this back and giving it an even more thorough consideration. And I do see that some of the suggestions that I'd made regarding lack of driveways and shallow setbacks and lack of sidewalks has been incorporated. I haven't had a chance to give it a real thorough read, but I'm looking forward to doing that in the next couple days and consulting with committee members to see if maybe there is, a CDO or something that I might want to tweak it just a tiny bit more. But I do see that there's been quite a bit of work, and I really appreciate it. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that it looks like it's a lot easier for neighborhoods to get in on this program, especially, lower income neighborhoods and neighborhoods with a lot of rental property. Those neighborhoods have really been underserved by this traffic management program. And I know several streets in my own district that could really benefit from it, but have those challenges.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any further input? Commissioner Denson.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the work of LRC on here, especially to clarify the categorization different streets, which we know in that previous version was very confusing and kind of had inconsistent language there. And then definitely what Commissioner Link brought up, just to make this a little bit easier for neighborhoods to opt into, and also more flexible with the criteria for them to be able to get into this, which I think was something that was very necessary. Sometimes there was obvious problems happening in neighborhoods with traffic, yet the very specific criteria didn't tick all the boxes, and so therefore they weren't be able to move forward. So I think this flexibility is good, and I'm glad to see this move forward, as within just the last few months, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I had multiple neighborhoods who have tried to opt into this. And again, I just have to give a kudos to our traffic engineering department and to Tim Griffith, for even while we were in flux here trying to figure this whole thing out, they were very, very responsive, meeting with residents still during this time period and talking them through it, just trying to find ways to work with them while we were in this holding pattern, and then preparing them very well to be able to act on this new program once it's in place. So I look forward to this being passed.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. A whole lot of real good work was done before I joined LRC. I'm also really glad that we got a number of provisions in here that ensure that tenants can participate in this, which I'm really excited about. The renter inclusion that Commissioner Link was alluding to. I did want to check with Manager Williams. I know there's a lot of neighborhoods who have either, requested something and they didn't qualify before, but they probably would under this, or who have been waiting for this. Does staff already have a list of neighborhoods to kind of go to or to follow up on, or is this kind of the case where once we pass this, everyone's going to kind of reinitiate?
Well, I would say, Commissioner Houle, that certainly we could notify past applicants of the new changes in the ordinance, but it would be up to them to initiate the request, either as the new policy says themselves or through their district commissioner.
Okay, so it's safe to assume everyone should probably just send in a new request once we get through this meeting.
Yeah, conditions change, residents change, and so we would want to give every not to put folks through unnecessary process, but to ensure that, that we are addressing the issues at hand.
And do you anticipate that can be as soon as the day after the meeting, or is there kind of a window that staff would need before they'd be prepared to start fielding those applications?
Well, we'll take them on a first come, first served basis. Obviously the staff's got a workload they've got to manage, but we'll as soon as the policy becomes effective, we will accept applications for that.
Awesome.
And Commissioner Houle, if I might, now, of course, the program itself will be limited to the financial resources allocated to it. So we'll probably do a first come, first served type basis and work through the process. If there's a flood of applications, it will take some time to get there. Invariably, we may run out of resources before. So just want to make sure we manage expectations for folks to understand that, this will be limited by the resources that are budgeted.
And I do like also that the policy does map out, if we find ourselves in that scenario, how to build equity into that process, which is quite awesome as well.
All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 9. Which is a set of water line upgrades, and this would, at our voting meeting, award a contract for these. You can see graphically where these are on the 6th page of the agenda report. That's one of the recurrent activities of public utilities, that sometimes water lines become distressed or undersized relative to the need to provide water throughout the community. So any questions about this item?
Move to consent.
I'll second that.
All right, everybody fine moving this to consent? All right, we are winning. Thank you, everybody. Make a note there. Madam Clerk, number 9 to consent. All right. Number 10 is a nature playscape donated by Athens Clarke County to the Sandy Creek Nature Center Incorporated Board. And I believe a couple of children of elected officials have already leapt upon some of the items on this playscape. I'll begin with one of them, Commissioner Denson, and then I'll move to Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it was fantastic for us to be able to go out to their kind of sneak peek with the Sandy Creek Nature Center Incorporated's unveiling. My daughter definitely enjoyed it a lot, and it wasn't even quite finished yet. And I'm just really excited for us to have something like this on the west side, something that can kind of almost be a counter to what's over at the Botanical Gardens, that fantastic playscape that's there, but now something that's more accessible to families and children on the west side. And can't thank the board of the Sandy Creek Nature Center Incorporated enough for the amazing work that they've done for this community and bringing this vision to reality here. Very, very excited about it. And after we've heard from the rest of the commissioners who want to speak to this, I would be happy to see this get moved to consent.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I'll third that as well, and just want to say what a wonderful donation this is from the Sandy Creek Nature Center Incorporated Board and all their work that they've done into this. I happened to be out on my bike today, surprise, surprise, and went by there, and it is now open to the public. So it's just really a wonderful compliment on this side, on that side of town. And so imaginative. It's such an exciting place, I think, for grown-ups as well as kids. So I'd love to move this to consent.
All right. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I don't even have children, and I can't wait to get out there and play on this thing. And I think this is, first of all, thank you to the Sandy Creek folks for donating this beautiful, beautiful playscape. And I really see this as Athens making great strides to be a truly inclusive, family-friendly community. There's more and more for families to do things with their children and to draw visitors who have children. So this is gorgeous. I can't wait to hang out there.
All right. It's a fun place to be. All right, we're going to move this to consent, Madam Clerk. I'm glad to see another one. All right, and following discussion in the last couple of months, we have some namings that occur under our legacy policy, our former policy, and so 11 is a request to name the gymnasium at Lay Park for Mr. Willie Hull and rename the East Athens Community Center for Mr. Aaron Hurd. So input here.
I just want to jump in and say I fully support both of these name changes. These gentlemen have been pillars in this community. A lot of new Athenians, once you live here, you're an Athenian, but a lot of new Athenians need to do some history on both of these. They have epitomized the role of Black men in this community that we keep saying we want to have. And this is how I think we began creating a legacy and promote Black Lives Matter, which was the intent of the Athens Black Lives Matter resolution, to lift these type of gentlemen up that have contributed so much. I hope this passes with no glitches. They both deserve it. They've earned it, and I think it will send a powerful message to the community.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'd like to leave this off consent just in case anyone would like to come speak at the next meeting in favor, as I'm sure many people might like to. But yeah,
definitely.
I think that is a good idea. I do think that there might be people who want to give honors and kudos to these folk.
Great. All right, Commissioner Myers. You're muted, Commissioner.
Okay. I just want to point out to anyone who's listening and likes reading agenda reports that the letter that Mr. Dunn that's submitted in favor of this renaming, it should be required reading to really understand the contribution that these men have made. It was probably it was the best part of my agenda review today. And so if anyone is out there doing a piece on this, I'd open this up and find out a little bit about these men. And the last paragraph, I think, is worth reading. It says, "There is so much more I could say to justify the respective name changes, but I do not think that it's necessary. This town has reminders of people and events that work to keep people shackled by poverty and inequity. Now is the time to honor two modern-day heroes of hope and uplift." And that kind of set it off.
Thank you. I appreciate you noting that. Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I just want to give a thanks to Mr. Dunn for all of his patience and perseverance and continuing to stick around and push for this. I know this took a lot longer because of the timing of when we started to consider a policy, which will hopefully make this sort of thing easier for folks in the future. But I'm really glad that hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be making this happen. So,
thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we'll leave this off consent just to honor those folks. All right. Item number 12 is a purchasing card ordinance for elected officials. We're required to do this so that elected officials such as the sheriff could have access to a purchasing card. Manager Williams, just for the benefit of the public, could you talk a little bit about how any public official purchases in Athens, Clarke County are reviewed by finance, including for elected officials, just so everybody understands that process?
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, this is something that was prompted by some state legislation. And I think Attorney Drake's done a good job of pulling together the ordinance and explanation here. And we are, as a matter of fact, we're going through an even more extensive, I guess, review of P-card purchases through finance, a new system that we're doing for review. As a matter of fact, I finalized my authorization today. And so there is, we have a very good system in place. Don't have any, issues with elected officials having those cards, although, they should all understand what the rules are governing those.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had two questions, I guess. The first was I saw that it was originally listed as a $10,000 maximum per month, and then that was switched to $25,000, I believe, in the recent update. Could we just get some clarity on why that was?
Yes, I'll give you some further details. This is something finance has been wanting to do for some time. And, there has not been any widespread abuse or anything. And, those limits have been in place for years. And just given, the amount of purchasing that this government does and efficiency, raising these limits is something finance has recommended for some time. But we'll give you some very specific response, Commissioner Hull.
Awesome, thanks. And then the other question I had was, I saw that we as commissioners are listed on here, but I wasn't personally aware of commissioners ever having one of these. Are there examples of that being the case, or is that a new update, or is that an old thing that's been at our disposal but was just not been used?
Well, Clerk Spratlin in the past has really handled, travel for commissioners. Clerk Spratlin, would you like to speak to that?
We do handle the registration and lodging for training. Other than that, we might have requests for any other thing that would call for a credit card that we cannot process.
Well, I can speak to that. I mean, finance suggested this list of the officials who are on here. If the commissioners would like to exclude themselves, you certainly can. You have two portions to this piece of legislation. One is the ordinance that is required to be put in place for elected officials to have purchasing cards. And and to my knowledge, none of the elected officials, well, we did, according to finance, I think that they did discover that the coroner has had a purchasing card. So technically, to be in compliance, we should pass this ordinance. But this request came from, like the mayor said, the sheriff wanting a purchasing card. So in order to do that, we had to the commission has to approve this ordinance. It sets guidelines and then penalties for misuse or abuse of the government card. And we have to adopt policies governing that use, which the unified government already has. And then the second part, you have to, in addition to the ordinance, the commission has to, by a resolution, authorize the elected officials it wishes to have a purchasing card. And so this list was provided by finance. If the commissioners would rather not have that option, we can certainly remove them. But so that's kind of the explanation.
Thanks for that, Attorney Drake.
And Mayor, if I might,
please do.
The reason there wasn't any particular reason they were included on there, just to kind of be comprehensive and not, have to come back in a separate action at some day in the future.
Okay. Any further queries or input on the side?
Mayor, I'd like to add something if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead, Commissioner.
So Clerk Spradlin has always done a good job of keeping us in line about registration if we want to go to some training, or even reimbursement if we get to those. I just think I think for practical purposes and for the optics of it all, I think removing us from this list, and if we have to come back for a separate action, I'd be okay with that. But I think we need to. If a commissioner wants to justify why that's the case, they need to justify why that's the case at that time. So, constitutional officers, I understand completely, needing what their resources may be that is approved by this body and the public. But for transparency's sake and for the public's sake, I'd feel more comfortable if we weren't part of this, and if need be, further action or future commissioners can come back and change that. But that's my 2 cents on that.
I'm similarly situated, Commissioner. I find lighter pockets let me move faster.
And I want to agree with that. I think Clerk Spradlin does a good job in handling our expenses. I think that I just got too many issues right now for me to be handling. I got too many issues, and guess what? I'm not the only one on this commission that probably got issues. So I would like, Commissioner Davenport always says this, but I don't think nobody listens. And he says sometimes we're going too fast and we need to slow down. I really think this one we need to put the brakes on quick, and if it's a need that arises later, we could revisit. But I would like to opt out on this this portion, and support the sheriff though.
I agree. Commissioner Thornton has a lot of issues.
All right. Any others?
Mr. Mayor, this is
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, I did have kind of that feeling. And Mr. Mayor, if you could let us know whether you think your office should be included. But I guess it sounds like we have a commission-defined option to take the commissioners out.
I'd be fine removing the mayor as a prospect too. I mean, there's never been a time when I've needed a
and then
e-card, even in a travel environment.
Yeah, and then as clarification, the ones that would be included, there's a referendum vote from the public to agree to this, and then each department would have to have their own policies for it.
Describe that if you would, Attorney Drake.
No, that's not. To a 2-step process again is to adopt the ordinance authorizing purchasing cards for elected officials, and that ordinance. And then the second process is the commission has to adopt a resolution specifying what elected officials it wants to allow to have a purchasing card. And so And that resolution indicates, and the ordinance itself indicates that they agree they have to be bound by purchasing card policies and procedures. So, which is the same policies and procedures that, like, for example, a department head who has a purchasing card would have to follow, or there's no referendum or anything. I mean, most communities have already, I think, done this. Actually, a lot of communities have. So this is just coming on. It came about because a request from the sheriff's office and finance department thought it was a good idea, and when they investigated it, found out that actually the coroner already had a purchasing card, so he was an elected official. So we need to do this to bring that in line, or either take his purchasing card away from him.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that we're fine just keeping up with our parking hang tags. Might be enough for us.
Yep, we'll remove the mayor and the commissioners.
Yeah, and we can just make a red line modification of this for the voting meeting. Everybody seems to be in the same page there.
Will do.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm glad we're taking ourselves off of here. I am still curious. I guess the $25,000 a month figure just jumps out to me as, like, if someone's walking around with a P card and they can spend up to $300,000 a year on it. I guess I'm trying to make sense of what needs to arise for a given person to need to do that.
Well, I think these limits that were provided by finance, now it's been changed. They changed it to per transaction $2,499.99. Higher limits approved by the purchasing administrator, and per month $20,000 higher limits approved by the purchasing administrator. And so these are the same limits that, for example, I have a purchasing card, and certainly I don't spend $20,000 a month. But Manager Williams was just telling there is a detailed process where I have to go through. Once my legal assistant Robert enters them, you have to have a receipt that's required for any purchase. And then you have to go through, and I have to re-review it and sign off on it now in the new system. And then there's an opportunity where y'all have, if there's abuse, to revoke the card. The commission does, of being an elected official after a warning. And then you can suspend the elected official's authority to use the county purchasing card. And then you can also have the authority, or you can revoke that person's authority to use the card. So there is a lot of oversight. And the only thing I can think is, I guess, if you, in lieu of writing a check, if you get it approved and follow correct purchasing policies and procedures related to getting 3 bids, if you had an expensive item, I guess you could buy it with your purchasing card, a legitimate item, You want to add anything to that, Mr. Manager?
No, sir, Attorney Drake. I think you covered it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm probably as inquisitive as Commissioner Houle on this. Even though we have these safeguards, $25,000 a month seems exorbitant. So my question to you would be, or to somebody, how does this impact our budget? We have a budget that we vote on and we set. So if somebody's out spending $25,000 every month, my questions would be is, how does that impact the budget, our general budget? And my next question, what the heck are you buying for $25,000 that you need a purchasing card? Give me an example.
Well,
yeah. Well, I would say, at the end of many of the meetings, we have a list of expenditures over $10,000. And there's. Well, first off, Commissioner Thornton, it would not affect the budget at all. None of the departments really have the ability to outspend their budgets without your approval. It would make for less purchases or more efficient purchasing. It would not impact that at all. And we can certainly give you some examples. Any number of things that are just costly items that have to be purchased from time to time.
If you would give us examples of what that, just one simple one, I think I could maybe understand this a little bit better.
Well, off the cuff, traffic signal equipment, there's components and parts and things like that that need to be, when something goes down, bought, in a quick fashion, and allowing somebody to do the purchasing, use the purchasing card as opposed to a PO is just a quicker process.
Oh, okay.
But that's just one. And I hear you. You'd like a representative sample of things that this seems to make sense for, and we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Commissioner Myers.
I'd love to see that as well, but I know that in my last role at Athens Tech, I had a P card, and you would think, well, what do you use it for? But in terms of doing that order the alternate way, at the end of the year, when you were using funds and you had staff, so you might have been ordering printers for a bunch of people that were at the end of the year, if you had enough money to do that and that was needed, and the P card facilitated that kind of purchase. And I'm not sure if that's what's included in there as well, because I assume that you can use that to buy supplies for staff or for the as well. So anyway, this is just my 2 cents there.
Thanks. And follow up, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess I'd also like a list of, if we're doing like the list for dummies, so to speak, the things that it can be used for, or would be used for, and also the things it can't. One of the cautions I have is the way all the little things can add up. What I like about Clerk Spratlin booking our hotel rooms for us when we got to go to a conference is we know that everybody's kind of getting the same affordable rate hotel, and I'm cautious of leaving leeway for people to get themselves fancy hotels or fancy dinners or something on P cards. So just ensuring that somewhere in our policies and procedures it prohibits that sort of luxurious or erroneous spending would be helpful. I'm assuming it's in there, but it would be helpful to see that explicitly before we vote on this.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, so a little more follow-up on this. All right, items 13 and 14 are title only, the calendar year 21 pavement maintenance program and the heavy duty and standard wrecker on-call service contracts. These are recurrent items. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I did have a question about item 14, the wrecker on-call service contracts. Just if we could get some clarity on how the calls are going out to which companies. I've had some local business owners express concern that it seems like there's a perception of preferential treatment for a single company in town, and so some information to explain how the calls are being dispatched to who and why would be very helpful for that.
Sure, and I can
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mayor. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a sort of standard process by the policy and the contract provision. So, as I think Manager Williams was about to say, staff can definitely provide that.
So, at a high level, Commissioner, for the public's benefit, at some time ago, that was the genesis of a lot of complaints about it. So how could you go about having a rotation, if you will, with several wrecker companies? And basically what they came up with was, or the commission in the past, was that there would be a main single company that would get 40% of the calls, generally, and then a secondary company that would get 20% of the calls, a second company, and then the rest of the anointed companies would split the remaining 40%. And so we'll give you some more details about rotation, or if somebody can't take a call and how that passes along, we'll certainly give you more of that. But this is the essence of the contracts that you're being asked to be awarded are split amongst various companies.
Mayor,
all right.
If I could just make a comment.
Commissioner Denson, yeah.
Because I remember when I first got presented with this, I had similar questions, and this, of course, was sent to Government Operations Committee a year and a half ago or so for us to review. And what really came out was a lot of what goes into this is that the companies that reliably actually show up on time when people are having dangerous emergencies or roads are blocked, the companies that reliably show up are the ones getting that bigger portion because we need them to show up. And that companies that have a high rate of not showing up get put to the bottom just because we need this to be reliably taken care of in a quick and expedited manner. And so that was kind of what we ended up reviewing and kind of keeping that same process in place because of that.
Thanks for that, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Denson said. I was on that committee that reviewed this pretty extensively, and yeah, there was a lot more to it than meets the eye, and maybe staff could provide us with some of the minutes from those meetings and the GovOps report that came out of it, and that would provide some clarity to some of the newer commissioners.
Could be helpful. Thank you for that. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. And then, yeah, just regarding number 13, I'm guessing it's going to be kind of a dense document with a list. So I was just curious how soon we can expect that in advance of our voting meeting to have time to look at it.
Yes, I think this week. We were trying to get the verbiage right, and I knew, just like Commissioner Denson mentioned, that there had been, a lot of past mayor and commission action on that. So to Commissioner Link's request, I was trying to get the agenda item more fortified with some history in it. But certainly the further information Commissioner Link asked for, we may not attach it to the agenda item, but we will certainly forward that out to you as additional context.
I believe there was some pretty comprehensive data on response times and things like that we considered in discussing this. So that might be helpful to share.
Hey, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. So last one, it's kind of a meta question about these title-only agenda items, which is some of these things, we get information on it shortly after the agenda setting meeting, but our website doesn't update with the voting meeting agenda until, a week or two later. Is there a way that once we're sent those materials, they can also get put on the agenda setting agenda, maybe with a note if necessary up top that says like this was received on such and such date, just so that it is also available for the public to see as well with some advance notice?
We're certainly supportive of that, but Clerk Spratlin, logistically, how does that work for you?
We can make it happen if we get it in time.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Clerk. No,
awesome.
I think
Thanks, y'all.
Being able to modify it, even if there's a note on the web page that reads, updated April 22nd or something of that sort. All right. I'm going to move on to planning and zoning.
Mayor, if I might.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I wasn't sure if you were going to go to the pavement maintenance contract. So let me just say that should be ready for you fairly quickly. We were just waiting on some final unit pricing. The overall intent is to, if the pricing's favorable, use the contractor that was competitively bid recently to provide the calendar year 21 paving maintenance program. And so that's what we were waiting on. We were hoping to get it today. I think we'll get it tomorrow at the latest, and we'll get that right out to you. And Commissioner Houle will follow that suggestion with Clerk Spratlin to get it posted as quickly as possible.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that when this pavement maintenance list comes around, that's the time to take a look at some of the streets that could be good candidates for traffic calming, 3-laning, anything we can do to, enhance pedestrian and bike safety. And we do have a policy that automatically reviews some of these streets. So I just want to remind folks to take a good look at the list as soon as it's out and see if anything pops into your mind as to streets that do have particular issues and how we might be able to, make those striping tweaks to them in this new pavement that could really help make them safer for folks.
Thanks for that reminder.
To that point, Mayor, I just point out that, one of the, I think last year's conversations revolved around Rock Springs, and that project's finished and I think looks real good.
It does. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Planning Director Griffin for the 2 planning and zoning items.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor. We have two for you this evening. The first is a request at 225 Freeman Drive for an amendment to an existing plan development. Underlying zoning on this property is currently RS25, and they're asking to go to an RM1 plan development, which is very similar to the original underlying PD that was approved for the People of Hope property back in 2005. The underlying RS25 changed when the decision was made to not extend sewer up into that basin, and there was a comprehensive rezoning of that sewer basin. But it's actually, this request is less dense than the current PD of record. As I mentioned before, this was the original site for the People of Hope development that started with an approval of a PD back in 2005. There was some limited infrastructure that was put in place. There were some sewer issues that were worked through, and ultimately this project never came to fruition and has sat idle since then. It's currently one property that's 17 acres in size. The proposal is for about 25 total units, 12 of them being cottages, one commons building that would include 13 more as phase 2, and then a community room for it as well. We're calling this, for purposes of what our zoning ordinance and how it defines it, as an assisted living or personal care home. It's really not that, but that's the closest thing that we had to plug in. What Hope 139 House will do is provide housing and assistance for at-risk mothers and their children for a period of time. If you've not had a chance to read the report presented by the applicant as part of your packet, I would encourage you to do so. There's a lot of information in there regarding their program, what they're currently doing, and what their vision is for this property. So you can see the site here is on the west side of Freeman Drive. See there the current RS25 designation with the PD. This is the PD that was approved in 05, about twice the density of what is being proposed now. And just a very, very small portion. A lot of clearing was done then, and some limited grading and infrastructure, but that was it. The proposal to amend would go from this being the current plan of record to something that was more like this, still including some buffering along Freeman Drive. But if you can see my cursor, these are the 12 cottages designed in kind of an inward-facing cottage court community, like a couple that you've seen, that would provide individual 2- and 3-bedroom cottages for the mothers with their children. And then the second phase would be getting up into the commons building and the community room that would provide additional housing. And they're also, as you will see when you read the report, if you haven't already, they seem to be very interested in trying to incorporate the community into this too, especially through the community room, where there would be some functional space in there that would not only be exclusively for the families that would stay here, but also for the community to be involved as well. Just some examples. They're fairly small, 2- and 3-bedroom cottages. This would be I think this is the Commons building. Planning Commission recommendation on this one is to approve with conditions. It was a unanimous vote. There was a waiver to the design standard section 925.8, which involves frontage on public streets, and that we just want to make sure that this is really kind of exclusive for the proposed use as part of this PD. And then there's some additional right-of-way required along Freeman Drive that's also included as a condition, much more of a technicality. But this was a unanimous recommendation to you from the Planning Commission to approve this amendment.
Thanks, Brad. And this is in Commissioner Thornton's district.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this project. I have the history of the original project, City of Hope, that Brad mentioned, and it has remained vacant. And I think before COVID, I was approached about this project, but it wasn't until I guess about a week or so Commissioner Link said they were trying to get back in touch with me. So I'm glad they've gotten this back on track. I like this project because they're opening up the area for folk in the area. They're even planning like a basketball court. I think Brad mentioned a common area, recreation area that will be open to the residents surrounding this site. I think these are the things that and the partnerships that I would like to see us build on. And when we say we're trying to help the most vulnerable, these are the kind of projects that I support. And I'm very glad that it's in my district. We have no recreation facilities in this area. We have no basketball courts. We have no recreational rooms. So not only they're going to be catering to their clientele, they have opened their arms in support for the residents in this area that often have been overlooked. So I hope that you read your information. If you have any questions, you know how I operate. If you got questions, give me a call. Don't wait to get me on, on blast and be asking me stuff. So, but this is something that I think all of us would be proud of. And not only we proud of, it's something that is needed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other input from commissioners. Commissioner Link.
Yeah. I did speak briefly with one of the architects for the project, and this is a really sweet project that certainly fulfills a real need in our community, and I didn't realize that it was also open to the surrounding community, so that's even more exciting. I'm a big fan of cottage courts in general, knowing that this is a cottage court project that specifically caters to single mothers and children and at-risk families is really exciting, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition.
And the other thing about this project, even though they do not have a site, they're already servicing mothers and single moms. So this isn't just something on a piece of paper. They've just taken this to the next level to do bigger and better things.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any further input on this item? I'll say I think this is probably as ideal a use for this property as I could imagine. I think dovetails nicely with the adjacent neighborhoods, and definitely glad to see this have the opportunity to be put into productive use. It's been a little bit of a dumping ground in the time since it's been effectively abandoned. So thanks, Brad. Moving on to the last item of the evening regarding 1698 South Milledge and 225 Gran Ellen.
All right, thank you again, Mayor. This amendment to an RM1 PD, and on its face, this is a very, very minimal amendment to a PD that takes us back into the late 80s with its original adoption. The original PD approval was for townhouses on Milledge. This property is right at the terminus of East Campus where it runs into Milledge Avenue. It was very contentious in the late 80s when it went through before it was finally approved. And part of the approval, and I can move ahead, I'll show you the green space and the buffer along the Gran Ellen portion of the property that was part of the concession with the PD back in the day. But it's currently consisted of 2 parcels at about 1.5 acres total. It is a condominium townhouse type development that fronts on Milledge. The proposal is simply of the portion deeded to the condo association with the original development, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. The proposal is from one of the owners of one of the condos would like to purchase part of the green space, leave it as green space, but fence it in for the use of their dog. And that was not something that we could administratively approve because of the nature of the open space, which did require them to proceed through this process for clarity and for respect to the original binding site plan. But there is no proposed expansion, no proposed development at this point, other than they would submit upon approval of this PD amendment a subdivision plat. You can see here the property, Milledge here. This is Gran Ellen. These were the original townhomes that were built that have been there. And all of this property up as serving as a buffer along Gran Ellen was approved as a buffer and has remained that way since its original development. What you see here is there is a triangle portion of the open space that currently stands alone as a separate parcel, although it is still open space and can only be used as open space under the current PD. This property, the triangle, was just never conveyed to the condo association originally when the rest of it was, which is why it's sitting there. This piece is, the small narrow strip along Milledge is what's being asked to be subdivided out and then purchased by one of the condo owners. This was the original approved PD, again, going back to 89. And then we've twisted on you a little bit here, but this is really all this is about, is the ability for them to subdivide this area that is shaded and then allow it to be purchased by one of the owners. Planning Commission recommendation is to approve with some conditions. Most of them are technical in nature, just some minor modifications to the plan prior to approval of the subdivision plat. But probably the big condition is just the assurance that that new parcel shall remain in its current natural undisturbed buffer condition. Does not give them the ability or authority to go in and clear that in order to do a dog run. They can simply put up a fence and it is space for the dog to be out in. So Planning Commission recommendation was a unanimous vote to approve with those conditions.
Thanks, Brad. And this is in Commissioner Wright's district.
Thank you, Brad, because I was really having a hard time understanding this just by the packet, in reading it. So I wish that they were able to clean it up. There's a lot of invasives and stuff in that area, but and just to remind you guys, the top left of this corner is the, as they call it, the pumpkin church, where the pumpkin patch typically is on Milledge at Halloween time. And then this is the route that people take to Memorial Park. So the terrain there is kind of steep, and they're basically making a dog run, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm supportive of it. I look forward to hearing some questions that that need to be asked about it. And I'm glad that there's conditions for it. And it's just by having it sold to one of the condo owners, I guess that person would then take on the responsibility of the fencing and integrity of that. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the front yard of these condos is right, it's more of a patio. So I can see how if somebody had a dog, that they would want some running space close by for it. So I'm supportive of this.
And Commissioner, when they get into the fencing of the dog park, I would remind all of you, and you see them regularly from me, there is an administrative action process. If we did get to a point where there was some very limited hand clearing to clean it up some that they were wanting to do, that's certainly a process that we can quickly run them through and send it to you just to make sure, one, you have an understanding of what's going on and you don't have a concern of it. But, it would be extremely minor in nature. We just wanted to make sure they didn't go in and cut all the trees down and remove the buffering into the neighborhood off Milledge.
Yeah, we'll just let them be weed warriors. That'll work.
I think we can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I have some concerns about the perpetuity of this. So right now, the condo association owns that strip of land, and there's one member of the condo association, one property owner, who wants to buy that strip of land and turn it into a piece of private property outside the condo association, correct?
Outside the condo association, still within the plan development. Yes, that's correct.
And development. So it would have a separate owner outside of the condo association. Mm-hmm. And so what happens when the dog dies or the owner moves on? You have two separate pieces of unattached property. So like, I'm just curious. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm just wondering why the condo association itself, if there was a desire for a dog run in the condo association, why the condo owners themselves didn't get together to turn it into a dog run. I mean, maybe you have a dog that doesn't work well with other dogs, and this particular owner just wants it for themselves and they're one dog. But it's just doesn't seem very practicable to me in the long run.
We had a lot of questions with it too, and I guess where I ended up landing on it, Commissioner, is, you know, at the end of the day, if approved and they're able to create Tract A, it's going to continue to function very similar to this piece, which has functioned as a buffer separately owned since 1991, I believe is when it was created. The PD gives you the assurance that if they ever want to do anything other than what it is today, they've got to bring it back to you for approval of a binding plan.
So is there any maintenance of this property going on at all at current? I mean, does the condo associations sometimes go in or, you know, or deal with the foliage at all? And that responsibility of the new owner. And what if that new owner passed on and the property that property just kind of languished? Or maybe it's
based on the look of it, it does not appear that there's been any significant maintenance taking place on it, other than just remaining wooded. And I think the owners are very aware that by acquiring it, you know, they are taking on the liability for it as part of the acquisition.
Okay. I'm a little puzzled by the long-term practicality of that kind of odd arrangement, because it's not buildable, you know, and I just wonder if these folks are considering like the future saleability of their property if they have a condo in this piece of land. I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Any others? All right. Thank you, Brad. Thanks, commissioners. Thanks, Blaine, Judd, Madam Clerk. Everybody, please have a good night. Be safe out there.
Good night.
Night.